Hey guys, to my new subscribers, welcome to Blue Collar Catholic. Slowly but surely we're breaking through the shadow ban I've had since the last election. And I notice I'm getting a few more subscribers than usual. So if you're new to the channel, I recently invited most of the presidential candidates. I would have invited them all, but some just, it's impossible for me to get to them. But I invited as many as I could possibly get to, and two replied. Senator Tim Scott said he's too swamped this summer, but get back to him in the fall. Well, his campaign managers and assistants, they do the talking for these guys. So get back this fall, and we'll see if we can do something. No promises, but Dr. Cornel West, his assistant, said she spoke to Dr. West, and he said he would love to be on the show sometime at the end of June to give him some dates. So I had given him all the dates. I was available, basically gave him every date in June because I know these guys are super busy. And when it got close to the end of June, I got worried because they never replied. So I sent it back to the assistant, and I made a video saying, I know these campaigns are super busy, and if you're not on the Republican ticket or the Democrat ticket, you kind of strapped for money, and you usually got volunteers doing things. And, when you got volunteers, they have lives, they have families, they have, other priorities taking place. So I wasn't, offended. I didn't think that they were dissing me. I just thought it was, wasn't going to go as, I realized it wasn't going to go smoothly. And so I didn't want to keep you guys on the hook waiting until the end of June. But long story short, I recently got an email from, actually I got it from Dr. West's lovely wife, Dr. Amita Madhavi West. She it seemed like she was just seeing the original email for the first time, and because that's what she had her email attached to. So she said, sure, Dr. West would love to have this interview, but we're super swamped, as you can imagine. So let's look at early fall. So I'm thinking like September, maybe, hopefully, Lord willing. And if you're new and you're wondering why a blue-collar Catholic who's extremely conservative in his politics would want to interview Dr. Cornel West, who's probably the most liberal guy running this round. He's on the People's Party, which is kind of like a Bernie Sanders type socialist party, is because I believe in free speech, number one. Number two, although I think Dr. West's ideas for the country are bad, I don't think he's bad. I think he's a good, decent man. He confesses Christ as his Lord and Savior. He's never embarrassed to talk about Jesus. I believe he's a Baptist. He grew up in a Baptist family. His father was a Baptist minister. He's been a professor of philosophy at Princeton University, I think Harvard as well. Right now, he's a professor of theology at Union Theological Seminary. So I don't dislike him. I dislike his politics. So we're just going to have an open forum. It's not going to be a debate. I'm going to let him explain why he thinks his ideas are best for the country. And I think it'll be interesting, and it's a good opportunity to show people how to debate, because, I've been debating liberals since I'm a teenager, long before social media. And it used to be that you could be friends with someone you disagree with, and you just try and convince each other. But since social media became so big, people that aren't like politically intuitive, or it's not their instinct to be a political guy, they can't handle it. So they fight, they get angry, they take it personally. Sales and politics, you can't take personal, or you lose. If you get angry in the debate, you lost the debate, So I don't get angry, So anyway, so that's what's going on there. But I had you guys guess like usual, and nobody guessed him. A few people guessed Taylor Marshall, and so I wanted to address that. A lot of people asked me why don't I invite him, because you don't know, Taylor Marshall said he's running for president. But I told you in the lead up and in my hints, he's a declared candidate. Taylor Marshall's saying he's running, but he hasn't declared. To become a candidate, you got to get your name. To be serious, you got to get your name on all 50 ballots, and each state is different. This is why Dr. Cornel West is so busy, because he don't have a big political machine, like a Democrat machine or Republican machine behind him. He's got volunteers that got to get this together. So, like, for example, Marshall's in Texas. That's right where he lives. So to get on that ballot, he has to have 113,151 signatures by December 11, 23. So he's got to get enough people to go out and sign a petition that they want him on the ballot. Now, every state is different. Tennessee is really easy. You just need 275 by August of 2024. New York, you need 45,000. Some of them, you need signatures plus a fee. So you got to have money. So it's not that easy. So I seriously doubt that he's actually running. I think this is just clickbait. And personally, you know, Jesus says, love your enemies. And I love Taylor Marshall, but I don't like him. I don't like him because I don't like people that attack my family and lie about my family. You know, the Bible says we should speak truth in love. It teaches us in several places in the New Testament to speak the truth in love. And he speaks hate and he lies. I have several videos. I was going to go through them all, but there's so many lies about Pope Francis, it would take me all day. It would take half the video, where he totally either takes Pope Francis completely out of context or lies about what he says. And I show it in my videos what Pope Francis says and what Taylor Marshall said he said. As clear as day. And I still get Taylor Marshall sycophants attacking me, calling me vulgar names, you know, because they're driven by hate. They're driven by hate. He stirs up hate. And, you know, the Code of Canon Law says 1373. This is canon law, Catholic Code of Canon Law. Canon Law 1373. Every Catholic is to obey canon law. One who publicly, so Taylor Marshall publicly, stirs up hostilities or hatred among subjects, that's us, the lay people, which he does, against the Apostolic See, which he does, or against an ordinary on account of some act of ecclesiastic power or ministry, or incites subjects to disobey them, is to be punished by an interdict or by other just penalties. So this is why I don't like the guy. And, you know, one of his videos that I disproven, where he actually came out straight up, called Pope Francis, our Holy Father, a heretic. He left out a whole sentence. He read this long thing that Pope Francis said, but left out a whole sentence. And he said, based on some other pope, that means Pope Francis is a heretic, which in itself is something heretical to say. He was being a heretic, calling the Pope a heretic, because again, Code of Canon Law, which every Catholic must obey, 1404 says it's as clear as day. The first see, this is the Pope, is judged by no one. The only one that can call a Pope a heretic or a Pope an anti-Pope is a Pope. So Pope Francis would either have to resign like Pope Benedict did or die, and a new Pope would have to come, investigate, and say, yeah, that was an anti-Pope, or he was a heretic. No cardinal has that authority, no priest, but somehow this guy Marshall thinks he has the authority. And not only that, you know, another thing that's very sinful that this guy does, and he leads his men and women that follow him. You see such hate for Pope Francis, that he stirs up such hostility and hate towards the first see, and he judges the first see constantly. But not only that, even if our Holy Father wasn't the Pope, I think he's like 82 years old. It's like double the age of Taylor Marshall. You know, when I grew up, you know, I gave you could look at my testimony. I was a chief among sinners. I started selling drugs at 12. I didn't stop till I converted to Jesus Christ at age 19. And he took away my heart of stone and gave me a heart of flesh in Navy boot camp. But I always knew instinctively to show respect for elders. You know, we lived on the top of a really tall apartment building. And I would be out doing my thing, but I knew on Thursday my dad got paid and he took my mom shopping. My dad had severe COPD. They called it, you know, asthma at the time. Now they call it COPD. So I would make sure I was home at 5 o'clock because I knew they'd have a bag of groceries. They'd have to park on the avenue. There's no parking. It's all, you know, if you live in the city, Irvington, New Jersey, the avenue, Springfield Avenue, has all yellow lines. You're not supposed to park, but they would park there for enough time for me to grab the bags and run up and down the stairs to the top floor because there was no elevator. And then he would have to pull around and find a parking spot a block or two away to park, you know. And I did that because instinctively, you know, to respect your elders. I always greeted my father, my mother, my grandparents with a kiss. And I always say goodbye with a kiss and I love you. It was just instinctively. And it wasn't just me. You know, my friends were the same way. In fact, when I left for the Navy, my mother told me that every kid in our apartment building, and these kids all were dealers, and, you know, we all did bad things. We were city kids. We were bad. But she said they would never let her carry a bag up the stairs. She said not once. I was in the Navy 4 years, and they lived there the whole time, and not once did she have to carry her bags. And these were black kids, white kids, Spanish kids. It didn't matter. They just all instinctively knew you show respect for elders. You know, we lived in the worst neighborhood, but they knew her. She never worried, you know. But not every kid was like that. You know, I knew kids that talked highly disrespectful to their parents, you know, and I would be appalled, you know, and they weren't my friends. I wouldn't hang out with guys like that. I would do business with them. You know, I was an illegal businessman. You know, I would do business with them, but I consider those guys scumbags that talk disrespectful to elderly people. It was just you just knew in your spirit this was wrong. And you know, that was in Irvington. And I told you about a good friend of mine in Newark. His father, I actually did a video about his late father-in-law, Anthony Imperielli from Newark. And if you want to check it out, it's called The Real Saints of Newark. I talk about Tony. His name's Tony, Big Tony. But Big Tony, he's seen a problem in his neighborhood. In fact, this happened in our neighborhood too. Real quick, my mother-in-law cashed her check and she got paid minimum wage. She worked at a thrift shop and got paid minimum wage, and she would cash her check at a cash checking place. That's what we did in the city. None of us had bank accounts. You know, she'd go to cash checking place, cash her check, and on the way home she got mugged. And this guy grabbed her purse and punched her in the mouth, broke her dentures. So not only did they take all her rent money, $250 she had in their cash, and they broke her dentures, which was going to cost her money to fix. And me and my brother-in-law at the time were so mad. We grabbed bats and we went looking for this guy. Luckily for him, we didn't find him. And maybe luckily for us, I might have been in jail for the rest of my life if I would have found that kid. But what I did do, you know, she didn't know I was a drug dealer. She didn't know I always walked around with hundreds of dollars in my pocket. I told her, hey, when the guy ran away, you must have dropped your money by mistake. I said, here, you said you lost $250. I found this on the ground. I gave her $250. So even as a drug dealing scumbag that I was, you know, I respected the elderly, you know. And getting back to Anthony Imperielli, there was a problem going on in Newark at this time where the elderly would go to check, elderly women especially, but also elderly men. You know, some men, you know, they got hurt in the war, and they're you know, they might be in a wheelchair, and these were tough men, but they, you know, they get to an age and a place because of their wounds, they really can't defend themselves. And scumbags prey on the weak, and they would mug these people walking home from the check cashing place. But so Big Tony had his goombas, and these were no choir boys, I promise you, but they respected the elderly. And they would escort these people, and these people stopped getting mugged. This is a true story. This is how it went down. But the Bible is clear. When I hear Taylor Marshall talking to a man old enough to be his grandfather, the way he talks to him, I'm like, dude, do you not even believe the Bible? Let me just give you some Bible verses that this dude needs to understand. You know, I don't know how he grew up. You know, I have one subscriber who says he went to college with him, and he said pretty much was a trust fund baby, spoiled brat who thought he was better than anybody. You know, that would explain it. Or maybe he's just a bad person. I don't know. But Leviticus 19:32, stand up in the presence of the elderly and show respect for the aged. Fear your God. I am the Lord. 1 Peter 5:5, likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders. Clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility toward one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Exodus 20:12, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God has given you. The Holy Father is my father. I don't know if he's Taylor's or not. You know, he makes it seem like he's not his father. Matthew 19:19, honor your father and mother and love your neighbor as yourself. Ephesians 6:1-3, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with the promise that it may go well with you, that you may live long in the land. And now my favorite verse about the elderly. Timothy 5:1-3. Never speak harshly to an older man the way Taylor Marshall speaks to Pope Francis. Never speak harshly to an older man, but appeal. If you disagree to him, appeal to him respectfully as you would your own father. And supposedly he is your father, Taylor. Talk to younger men as you would to your own brothers. Treat older women as you would your mother, and treat younger women with all purity as you would your own sisters. This is how men act. This is how men treat people. Take care of any widow who has no one else to care for her. So there's a widow in your church and she doesn't have children to care for them. It's the church's responsibility. It's the men in the church's responsibility to stand up and take care of the widow. Hebrews 13:17. Obey your leaders and submit to them. Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will give an account. They got to give an account for what they did. We got to give an account to what we did. We're to obey them. They're to obey God. Let them do with this joy and not with groaning. Do it joyfully, for that would be of no advantage to you. Now, Elihu had waited before speaking to Job because they were older than he. Job 32:6. And Elihu, the son of Bachral, the Buzite, answered and said, I am young in years, and you are aged. Therefore I was timid and afraid to declare my opinion to you. 1 Kings 12:6. Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon. How would you advise me to answer the people, he asked. And then Job 12:12. Wisdom is with the aged, and understanding in length of days. So, biblically, we are to respect the elderly. Talk to them respectfully. Listen to them respectfully. If there are leaders, obey them respectfully. And you don't say, oh, well, the Bible says obey God rather than men. Yeah, if they tell you to do something sinful, you obey God. You still respect them, but you obey God. But Pope Francis has never told us to do anything sinful. Taylor Marshall has his believers believe in this. This is why in his recent poll of his believers, over 51% of them said they don't believe Pope Francis is even the Pope. And instead of correcting them, he keeps encouraging them. He stirs up the fire, you know. He stirs up the hatred and the hostility towards Pope Francis, you know. You look at, like I said, I got like a half a dozen videos where I show you where he said Pope Francis said this and he didn't say this. But I'm gonna tell you this. I'm gonna tell you this. Right now, I'm working a job where I can only make videos on the weekends. If you hear Taylor Marshall say something Pope Francis said, if you don't have time to look up yourself, because usually what I do is I look it up, but now I'm so busy, I just go to Michael Lofton, Reason and Theology, because I know he's on it like Blue Bonnet. He is on it like Donkey Kong. He really does the work. He does the homework. He looks at what Pope Francis says, and he shows you. And every time, Taylor Marshall is lying. So any subject, go to Reason and Theology. You know, I don't know this guy personally. I'm getting nothing by this. I'm just telling you that in the beginning, I used to look up everything. Now I go to him and I verify it, but he's always right. So I don't have time to be monitoring Taylor Marshall at this time, but he does a good job of sharing the truth in love. So Reason and Theology, the host Michael Lofton, I highly recommend you check that out. If you've got bad feelings about Pope Francis and you want to learn the truth about Pope Francis, don't listen to Taylor Marshall because he's full of lies. And when I make these videos, I always have his sycophants tell me, oh, look at you. You got 10,000 subscribers. He's got 500,000. Ha, ha, ha. It's like, dude, I don't care. That's like telling St. Paul, you were in prison. You were homeless. And Judas Iscariot's got 30 pieces of silver. Ha, ha, ha. That's foolishness to me, you know? The Bible says in the end times, there'll be false teachers that will tickle itchy ears. Right now, people love to hate. It's hard to love. It's hard to have joy. It's easy to hate and it's easy to have anger. And Taylor Marshall knows this and he taps into this and he gets people angry. It's like when Jesus was up there and the Pharisees of his time said, crucify him, crucify him. All people like, crucify him, crucify him. That's Taylor Marshall talking about the Holy Father. Crucify him, crucify him. That's how I see it. So I'm just a blue collar guy. Take what I say for what you want. I have nothing to gain. I have nothing to gain and nothing to lose, except that I was a Protestant for 30 years, believing lies about the Catholic Church. Now I'm a Catholic watching somebody called Taylor Marshall claim to be the Catholic, telling lies about the Catholic Church. I actually had someone, and I'm not going to give any names because people hate when I throw their names out there without asking them, but I have someone close to me, and they always hear me talking about Dr. James White, this anti-Catholic Protestant. And they don't watch YouTube. They're not, really in tune to they love the Lord and they're Catholic, but they never, they like reading their Bible and going to Mass, and saying their prayers. They don't get into YouTube. So I showed him Dr. Taylor Marshall, and I covered his name. I said, just listen to this short clip, and all the people I talk about, who do you think this is? I said, I'll give you one hint. He's Dr. somebody. And I go, that got to be Dr. James White. Dr. James White is the most anti-Catholic Protestant. And this person was like, well, this guy's so anti-Catholic, he must be Dr. James White. I said, no, he called himself Dr. Taylor Marshall. Doesn't have a doctor in theology degree like Dr. Bowman I have on the show, who's much smarter. But he has a doctor in philosophy, so he knows how to persuade people. And he's persuaded half his audience to think Pope Francis isn't the Pope. So, no, I'm not going to invite him on my show. I said I would. Second thought, I don't want him on my show because I don't want him spewing his hate and lies. If he repents and submits to the authority of the Pope, then I'll have him on my show. God bless and stay Catholic.